Marcus Aurelius, as one of Rome's good emperors, a Stoic philosopher, wise leader, and a symbol of virtue. But let's not forget, this is ancient Rome. Even the best had dark secrets. Behind the facade of the Philosopher King was a man with skeletons rattling in his closet. He was the last of the so-called good emperors. But there's one scandal they don't talk about enough: his wife. Marcus Aurelius was born into one of Rome's richest families, but that doesn't mean he had a charmed childhood. He lost his father when he was just 3 years old. It turns out Roman noble women weren't exactly the nurturing, hands-on type. Marcus Aurelius, his mother Lucilia, rarely spent time with him, leaving him to grow up under the care of nursemaids. His early years were marked by isolation, but everything changed when his caretakers decided it was time for a stronger male influence in his life. Enter his grandfather, Marcus Annius Verus, a powerful figure who quickly became Aurelius's new father figure. For the first time, Aurelius found genuine companionship. He bonded with his grandfather deeply and would speak fondly of him for the rest of his life. Yet, life in his grandfather's house wasn't perfect. After Aurelius's grandmother passed away, Verus took a mistress, one that young Marcus despised. Though known for his stoic, calm, and polite nature, Aurelius had no patience for her presence. He couldn't leave the house fast enough when she moved in, determined to escape the situation as soon as possible. As a homeschooled child, Marcus was a little unconventional. He started wearing rough, worn-out clothing and sleeping on the floor. Marcus Aurelius was never supposed to be emperor. Sure, he was rich and came from a powerful family, but there was lots of rich and powerful young men who were a lot closer to the emperor at the time. But in 136, something happened that changed everything. Hadrian had a sudden hemorrhage and barely survived. Suddenly, the most powerful man on earth felt mighty fragile. He started looking for a successor, and there was talk buzzing about the weird kid who slept on the floor and loved philosophy. Soon after Hadrian recovered from his attack, he did something no one expected. He announced that his successor was going to be a man named Lucius Commodus. People were very scared. Lucius wasn't exactly emperor material. He was old, sickly, and frail. He could barely stand under his own power, let alone run the Roman Empire. If anyone thought Marcus Aurelius was odd, Hadrian wasn't one of them. The ailing emperor thought he was just the man for the job. But Marcus was still too young to become emperor. But here's the important part. Marcus was engaged to marry old Commodus's daughter. So Hadrian figured he'd make Commodus his heir. Then Commodus would die quickly, leaving Marcus Aurelius the emperor. In the 138 AD, the most obvious thing in the world happened. Lucius Commodus fell ill and passed. Hadrian was already on death's door, and his heir still didn't manage to live him. Hadrian made a man named Antoninus Pius his heir. Hadrian really wanted Marcus Aurelius to become emperor one day, but it took some really messy dealing to get it done. Basically, after his first heir passed away, Hadrian made Antoninus Pius his heir, then had him adopt Marcus Aurelius as his son. Then, to really seal the deal, he made Marcus leave his fiancée and marry Antoninus Pius's daughter. Now that Marcus was officially in line to become emperor, Hadrian decided to try and take his own life several times. But people kept stopping him. He eventually succeeded by drinking and eating himself to death one night. Hadrian passed, Antoninus Pius became emperor, and suddenly Marcus Aurelius was one of the most important people in the empire. And that brought a whole host of new problems. In 145, Marcus married his sister. This wouldn't end up being the greatest relationship, but at least this couple did one thing really well: made babies. Faustina gave birth to their first child, a girl named Domitia. Soon after their marriage, Domitia would be the first of a whopping 13 children. Marcus Aurelius was famously stern and reserved. Faustina, not so much. One vice possessed her more than the rest: lust. She liked to sleep around a lot and have a lot of different partners. And because it was the Roman Empire, there was a lot of people to choose from. Marcus and Faustina's first daughter, Domitia, was a sickly child from the very beginning, and she barely clung to life for her first years. almost immediately after she was born, Faustina became pregnant again, this time giving birth to 2 twin boys. The couple rejoiced, but these were even more sickly than their first. The twins didn't survive long, and while grieving them, Demedia just got worse and worse. Marcus Aurelius should have been spending his days preparing to rule an empire, but he spent most of his time looking after his frail daughter. Sadly, his work couldn't save her. She passed at just 3 years old. The loss devastated the couple once again, and according to Aurelius's writings, this was a moment that changed him forever. After losing Demedia, Aurelius wrote this: "One man prays, how I may not lose my little child, but you must pray, how I may not be afraid to lose him." Rather than buckle under the pain of losing his children, Aurelius steeled himself into the hard man he'd become. He would end up needing every bit of strength he possessed, because the hard times were only beginning. Antonianus Pius reigned for 22 long years before he finally passed away. As soon as that happened, Marcus Aurelius finally became emperor. But there was a bit of a wrinkle. In a strange turn of events, Aurelius wasn't the only emperor. One thing is for sure: the start of Marcus Aurelius's reign actually went pretty smoothly. In fact, he would call his first years as emperor the happy times. See, if you call an early period the happy times, that can only mean one thing: there were some dark times ahead. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinet member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. Antonianus Pius wasn't exactly the most diplomatic ruler, and that meant he left quite the mess for Marcus Aurelius to clean up. Eventually, those old enemies came back to haunt him, and Aurelius learned there's a difference between learning how to run an empire and actually doing it. One of Antonianus's old enemies was the king of Parthia, and not long into Marcus Aurelius's reign, said king revolted. To make matters worse, the Roman governor, Severianus, was convinced he could take on the Parthians himself. Marcus charged straight at us into them and got his entire legion massacred, then took his own life. The situation in Parthia was getting completely out of hand, but Marcus came up with a devious plan, a plan that could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Parthia was in revolt, but Marcus had another problem: his co-emperor Lucius Verus. While Aurelius was all about running an empire, Verus was all about spending money, partying, and sleeping around, and it was starting to get embarrassing. So Marcus Aurelius decided there was nothing like a little campaigning to straighten a man out. He sent Verus to Parthia to deal with the upstart king, hoping the conflict would teach him how to be a better emperor. Marcus hoped Verus would lead his Roman legions to victory over the treacherous Parthian king. Verus said no. He spent the entire time partying and gambling with a bunch of bohemian actors while other men handled the conflict. Rather than make Verus smart enough, it made him even worse. That didn't stop him from taking all the credit when Rome captured the Parthian king's main stronghold. But that's not even the worst thing he did. Anyone who knew Lucius Verus knew not to trust him very far. And that included Marcus. He sent his cousin Libo along with Verus to keep an eye on the emperor. However, Libo mysteriously turned up dead very early on into the campaign, and few people thought it was an accident. Menists have long speculated that Verus personally had Libo taken out of the picture so he'd be free to party as he pleased. It's hard to imagine 2 emperors more different than Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. Verus went about doing whatever he wanted whenever he wanted, which almost always meant drinking and gambling, and never meant running an empire. Meanwhile, Marcus Aurelius always asked the Senate for permission whenever he wanted to spend money on a new project, even though as emperor he could do whatever he wanted. The world was changing fast while Marcus was emperor. Trade networks spread further than ever before, and the Romans actually made contact with China for the first time ever. This meant goods and information spread across the globe. But that's not the only thing that spread. Around 165, Marcus would face his greatest enemy yet. It came back with the soldiers from the east, and it claimed more lives than any battle ever could. The Antonine Plague had arrived. As if Lucius' virus campaign in the East couldn't have gone any worse, when it came back to Rome, he brought the plague with him, believed to be smallpox or maybe measles. Whatever it was, it hit Rome like a ton of bricks. People started dying by the thousands every single day. In a matter of months, Marcus's hold on his empire started slipping. But at least there, he found a silver lining to this catastrophe. The plague was one of the most horrifying events in human history. By the time it had ended, it had claimed the lives of up to 10 million people. However, it did solve at least one of Marcus Aurelius's problems. In 169, Aurelius's hapless co-emperor fell suddenly ill and passed at just 38 years old. Reports at the time said it was food poisoning, but many historians have speculated it was the plague. Perhaps Roman officials didn't want people thinking a grand divine emperor had died the same way as the common people. Either way, that was one less headache for Marcus Aurelius. But the worst scandal of his reign was soon to follow. They obviously didn't have email in the Roman Empire, so that meant news traveled really slow. And when news did arrive, who can say if it was even true? That's what happened when, in general, Avidius Cassius received earth-shattering news in Egypt. Marcus Aurelius was no more. He wasted no time in proclaiming himself emperor, completely unaware that Marcus was very much alive. The whole thing started with a simple misunderstanding, but it would end in bloodshed. The smart thing for Cassius to do would have been to renounce his claim to the throne once he realized Marcus Aurelius had lived. But no one who wants to rule the Roman Empire would give up power that easily. By the time he heard the truth, he already had 2 legions behind him, and he decided he liked being emperor. That was the biggest mistake he ever made. Cassius got to enjoy being a fake emperor for exactly 3 months and 6 days. After he realized the news of Marcus Aurelius' passing was greatly exaggerated, he kept up the charade. But the writing was on the wall. Soon enough, one of his own centurions stabbed him in the back, literally. They then cut off his head and sent it straight to Marcus Aurelius to prove their loyalty. The head absolutely horrified Aurelius, and he refused to even look at it. According to history, none other than Faustina herself, Marcus's own wife, put Cassius up to the whole thing. She knew that her husband was growing old and frail, so she wanted to set up a puppet emperor to keep the throne warm until her son Commodus came of age. As if it wasn't enough to sleep around on her husband. But now she stabbed him in the back too. If indeed it was Faustina behind the false emperor, she didn't last long enough to try something like that again. She passed in 175 under mysterious circumstances. No historian is exactly sure what happened to her, so not only did Marcus Aurelius outlive the majority of his children, but he also outlived his much younger wife too. Marcus Aurelius's book, Meditations, is maybe his greatest accomplishment. Written over the course of 20 years, it's his reflection on life, politics, and philosophy. This landmark work has been studied by countless scholars over the centuries, which makes this next part hard to believe. Aurelius didn't want anyone reading it. He called the work To Himself because it was basically his secret diary, intended for his eyes only. Apparently no one cares about an emperor's privacy after he's gone. Some Roman emperors died at the hands of their own soldiers. Some took their own lives, or partied so hard the hearts gave up. Marcus Aurelius was not one of those. This simple reserved man met a simple reserved end. He passed from unknown causes in 180 A.D. He was nearly 60 and had been ill for years, and the man had surprisingly few enemies for a Roman emperor. So few historians think that there was foul play involved, but even remarkable men have skeletons in their closet. And there was one chilling rumor that dogged Marcus Aurelius wherever he went. His wife's many affairs were an open secret throughout Rome, but one of her flings got a lot more disturbing than the rest. Faustina allegedly had many partners, but one of them was special. Multiple ancient sources claim that she actually fell in love with a nameless gladiator. 2 things made this man different. Faustina actually cared for him, and Marcus Aurelius found out about him. And when the emperor did learn about his wife's affair, his response was absolutely twisted. Marcus Aurelius was never one to rush into anything. So when he found out about his wife's new relationship, he asked some Chaldean soothsayers for advice. And the soothsayers had the perfect way for Marcus Aurelius to reclaim his manhood. First, they said Faustina must sleep with the gladiator one last time. I'm sure Aurelius wasn't too excited about that part, but it's what came next that was truly disturbing. According to some ancient sources, a group of soothsayers instructed Faustina to engage in a ritual involving a gladiator, one that would take a dark and violent turn. Following their advice, Marcus Aurelius was said to have killed the gladiator at the height of the ritual. The followed was even more unsettling. Faustina was reportedly made to bathe in the man's blood before consummating her union with Aurelius all over his lifeless body. While these accounts may be exaggerated or colored by the sensationalism of ancient historians, they reflect just how brutal and ritualistic life in imperial Rome could be. Roman history is far from dull. These events rival the most twisted dramas in their intensity and intrigue. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, Factinate, for more incredible facts about everything.